What a stupid question. Is it too late? I mean, are we just going to play gotcha all the time? You know what I'm saying? I'll tell you what's a mistake. To play the president's indecision as weakness. Why are you in a rush to get involved in a military situation? Stop playing gotcha and constantly trying to make the other side look bad. That is extreme thinking. We need to fight that, not feed it.
About whether you are moving closer, or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities. Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this.
So we got some updates for you today on the Iran front, because now that we are, frankly, currently in the situation that we are, and there's no going back, okay, the initial strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities have indeed happened. There is essentially this aerial war going on right now between Iran and Israel. Then at that point, do we make the decision here to escalate the situation or de-escalate the situation? Should America get more involved, or should it become less involved, if not involved at all whatsoever? And it is worth noting here that, you know, there is this push and pull effect, because despite many of the anti-war sentiments, hey guys, remember no new wars, remember that campaign slogan that drove the Trump revolution to begin with, and I would go so far as to argue nowadays are accepted by the vast majority of the MAGA base, there is still the same cast of nefarious actors who have been in the Republican Party long before Donald Trump, who have been lobbying for regime change and a war in Iran for decades now, and both people currently have the ear of the president. The question is, which faction here is ultimately going to win out? Well, the update we have for you today is that apparently Mark Levin and many of the neoconservatives who have been going to the White House constantly trying to convince Trump to totally betray, I guess, his initial campaign promises and all of that, seem to have been handed here something of a setback after the Trump administration, via Caroline Leavitt today, announced that they will be temporarily pausing their decision to escalate U.S. involvement or join Israel in a potential strike on Iran in order to allow negotiations now, and likely negotiations, to be taking place over the next 2 weeks. So to put that very simply, the Trump administration, now that they've basically made their point, right? And this is the thing, is that, despite, hey, the obvious possibility that what's going on right now could escalate into a war, the philosophy by Trump was essentially, okay, Iran was not willing to negotiate. They were basically standing still. They weren't really taking us seriously. So let's kind of have this show of force and hope that now Iran will come to the negotiating table. By the way, there's strong evidence that appears to be happening. So at that point, right, this is the major test. Now that, because in a sense you are playing with fire, and I did say that before, I was not necessarily the biggest fan of the decision to greenlight Israel going into Iran, but now that it's happened, it's like, okay, so now can we manage to get Iran to negotiate, or does the situation keep escalating, unfortunately, until you're basically in an all-out war? Again, this is the major test. So with that said, today in this video, I want to give you some updates on that front in terms of the current announcement of opened negotiations. And hey, at the end of it, right, either Trump is going to look like a genius, or he is going to betray the promise of no new wars. I tend to think, on this front, I think that despite, again, even me personally not really being the biggest fan, it's important to not be hysterical at the same time, right? I don't think that necessarily just because the initial strikes happened, it's a guarantee that we're going to be in Iraq War 2.0, but it is something we have to be skeptical and cautious about. So that's why I see it as objectively good news that, hey, that we're willing to have talks. We're willing to negotiate. We're never leaving a piece off the table. So with that said, I'll tell you about it in today's video. First though, folks, do us a big favor. If you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing here, guys, is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, as you can see here, right, I was not exactly exaggerating. You got Mark Levin, like I said, one of the biggest neocons left today with a major platform. He says, my friendly advice, no more meetings, okay? Again, you got Levin basically saying you should not even try to negotiate with Iran. You should not even try to make a phone call. Just go straight into all-out war, right? I mean, is that the argument here, right? I have no idea if this news report is accurate. Regardless, my friendly advice, no more meetings. There's literally nothing to discuss. So as major nations here, right, this is their argument, are on the verge of a potential war, and you can say, oh, that's an overreaction, but hey, we all know it's a possibility, okay? Like I said, you're playing with fire. It can work out really well. It can work out really badly. It's a dangerous situation. You should always have the possibility that you're going to talk to each other, that you're going to negotiate. It's an insane thing. Like this, frankly, I would say, okay, in some ways, a genocidal maniac is saying here, oh, let's just never talk to each other. Oh, let's just walk headfirst into war, And by the way, Mark Levin never found a war he didn't like. Okay, these are the very actors, by the way, I'd like to point out to the president who did not support him, in his initial campaign run. The entire first term of his presidency, they tried to subvert him. Okay, so frankly, this guy should not even have a platform in Trump's ear at all whatsoever. But nonetheless, okay, he's saying here, mission focus. So we need to succeed on taking out the nuclear sites. 80% of Americans want this done. It's almost over. I mean, 80% of Americans, yes, do not want America to have do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That is true. The means, however, by which you do that are a very important distinction that Mark Levin seems to apparently not understand whatsoever. But nonetheless, there you have it. Okay, that's his opinion. He's entitled to his. I'm obviously entitled to mine, which is I think this guy is a bloodthirsty lunatic. But ultimately, it is what it is. That, of course, moves us to the situation now more recently, where obviously there is this, again, back and forth decision where the National Security Council has recently met with Trump, and there are several options on the table. By the way, I think the Trump administration has intentionally published this, for instance, saying that they include dropping a bunker buster bomb on Iran's four-door enrichment facility. And if you ask me, I think this is basically the administration signaling to Iran, look, we can do this if we want to, so you better be careful. And in that sense, right, I understand the negotiation strategy. I understand peace through strength. What I don't understand or agree with is Mark Levin saying you should never try to negotiate, because that is insanity. Nonetheless, here is apparently the, I guess, war option being considered by the Trump administration. And today, later in the video, we will show you the peace option that for at least the next 2 weeks, the administration is saying it will be leaning towards. But first, take a listen to apparently what the administration is saying they can do to Iran if they want to.
Right now, the president is getting an intel briefing inside the White House, and he and his team are weighing their options on whether the United States should join Israel's attacks on Iran. One U.S. official has already told Fox the president has been asking questions to his aides about bunker-busting bombs. Exactly what are they? What do they do? Get into it. How many would you need? Iran says it would make the U.S. and its allies legitimate targets. But the White House says all options are on the table, and Trump means it. And according to the president, a ceasefire is not an option.
I don't want to get involved either, but I've been saying for 20 years, maybe longer, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I've been saying it for a long time. And I think they were a few weeks away from having one. And they had to sign a document. I think they wish they signed it now. It was a fair deal. And now it's a harder thing to sign, It's a lot of water over the dam. But, it's I say it very simply. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon.
So that is, yes, one side to the story here, which is they are openly saying, I think on purpose, hey, America is considering they would be willing to join Israel in the attacks. And look, like I said, I'm anti-war. I'm America first. I don't even know if I necessarily agree with it, but I do say I can understand the negotiation strategy there, because obviously you want to make it clear to Iran all options are on the table. I understand that, world negotiations dealing with foreign leaders is not necessarily a kid's game. And sometimes, yeah, you have to talk tough in order to have peace. Oftentimes you have to make it clear that, hey, we are prepared for the possibility of war. That way the other side negotiates. So I do fully understand that situation. But with that in mind, I think it is worth noting here the alternative option. So that's us, kind of flexing our muscles at Iran. But apparently in today's press conference out of the White House. President Trump has proposed here a new deal to Iran via Steve Witkoff, who is basically the peacemaker, the negotiator when it comes to foreign affairs, according to Caroline Leavitt. And this deal right here is very simple and straightforward. No uranium enrichment, and to bar Iran from working towards a nuclear weapon there. And I think, on that front, the hope here by the administration, and again, they definitely took a gamble, right? It's either going to work out really well or really badly. We have to see. I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm not going to be a so-called panic in here. Okay, we're going to see what happens, right? The gamble that's being made is, hey, okay, by allowing Israel basically as like a proxy to strike Iranian facilities and now establish supremacy over the Iranian airspace, and it is true Israel's doing that, okay, maybe this is the leverage we need to finally convince Iran to negotiate. Trump recently has said even himself he believes Iran is ready to negotiate, but take a listen here to the announcement of, okay, now that what has happened has gone down, here's the path to peace for Iran that's being offered, and it just basically involves, right, no nuclear weapon.
So the president is always interested in a diplomatic solution to the problems and the global conflicts in this world. Again, he is a peacemaker in chief. He is the peace through strength president. And so if there's a chance for diplomacy, the president's always going to grab it. But he's not afraid to use strength as well, I will add. Francesca.
Thanks, Caroline. What exactly would a deal with Iran need to entail?
No enrichment of a uranium, and it would absolutely not. Iran is not absolutely not able to achieve a nuclear weapon. The president has been very clear about that. And by the way, the deal that Special Envoy Witkoff proposed to the Iranians was both realistic and acceptable within its terms, and that's why the president is sent that deal to them.
So yeah, again, I have to say, he's taking a serious risk right now. It's a serious gamble. But I do see the vision. I see what he's trying to do. Okay, I'm not that, ignorant of the situation. But with that in mind, it is, of course, worth noting here, it is a total rejection of the neocons because, yes, as I showed you earlier, Mark Levin, as one example, is saying to Trump, how dare you? You shouldn't even try to negotiate, right? Just keep bombing them. Keep bombing them. Oh, maybe it'll escalate the situation. Yeah, sure. If you get the U.S. involved, then Iran will probably also start directly attacking U.S. forces. And then long story short, probably have a likely war on your hands. It doesn't really matter. Mark Levin's kids aren't going to be the ones sent to the war. It is what it is, So, right. That's why I say, it is very important, frankly. Whatever decision the Trump administration makes, you do not have people like this in your ear allowing it to be made. But with that in mind, so today at that same press conference, President Trump has announced he will make his final decision on whether or not to join the war against Iran alongside Israel within the next couple of weeks. The announcement was made here, but he said, quote, based on the fact that there is a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the future. Keep in mind here, guys, Trump has been saying repeatedly that Iran is basically calling him, wanting to make a deal 100%.
Israel is doing very well, as you probably noticed, and I gave Iran 60 days, and they said no, and the 61st, you saw what happened. Day 61, so I'm in constant touch. And as I've been saying, I think a deal will be signed, or something will happen, but a deal will be signed. And I think Iran is foolish not to sign one.
Iran is accusing Netanyahu of attacking them to deliberately derail your nuclear plan. What do you say to that?
No. Look, Iran should have signed the deal.
If it would help bring Iran to the negotiating table, would you guarantee that the U.S. would not get involved militarily?
Well, I think Iran basically is at the negotiating table. They want to make a deal. And as soon as I leave here, we're going to be doing something. But I have to leave here. I have, this commitment. I have a lot of commitments. I have a commitment to a lot of countries, including the UK, where we just signed our deal.
So yeah, again, based on that fact, yes, that there is a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran, I will make my decision on whether or not to go within the next few weeks. And take a listen here as Caroline Leavitt makes that announcement for herself.
Now, regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today. So we'll kick it off for questions here in our new media seat. We have Eli Lake from the Free Press. Eli, go ahead.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
The Free Press.
So there you have it, right? Ultimately, we'll have to see what happens. I will say this, my honest prediction, given just the current state of what we know, the fact that the majority of Trump's cabinet these days is largely more on the America First anti-war side, whether you look at Vance, Gabbard, Susan Wiles even, Mike Waltz, the one neocon is kind of pushed out of the influence circle, that I think largely Donald Trump's intention here is not to start war. As I said, he's got to kind of keep his cards close to his chest, but I think it's pretty clear. He's trying to use essentially force to get Iran to come to the negotiating table. And in the end, nothing of large scale will really happen. I would have to assume, right? I'm pretty sure that Trump understands, yes, going into an Iraq War 2.0, a full out conflict with Iran is indeed something that would destroy his legacy, destroy his presidency. He does want to be remembered, as he says many times, as a peacemaker. And so this seems to be the direction we are headed. And, Mark Levin and neocons can see about that. But, at the same time, right, we have to see what happens, right? A lot is up in the air right now. It's kind of hard to constantly comment on a situation that is always in motion. But with that in mind, we have seen massive reporting in the past week that Iran is trying to open negotiations all of a sudden, like essentially they've taken the point, right? As you can see, in the midst of this ferocious Israeli air campaign, which, by the way, has been highly successful, yes, Tehran has told Arab officials, the negotiators, the mediators between the two, that they would be open to returning to the negotiating table as long as the U.S. does not join the attack, the officials there have said. So, Trump, I think, by kind of keeping this to Israel, it's clearly he didn't want to go fully in the mode of escalating because he wanted to have some cards on the table. He wanted to be able to negotiate, et cetera, et cetera. This is what Mark Levin, again, does not understand, right? Mark Levin is just like, bomb everything, okay? There are ways to use force and still be diplomatic at the same time, right? That, like I said, is at least the vision, the angle I see the Trump administration here playing. Again, is it risky? Is it dangerous? Yes. Should we all be concerned? Rightfully, I think yes. At the same time, this is kind of the counter argument that I guess is being made. They also passed messages to Israel saying it is in the interest of both sides to keep the violence contained. I mean, I think that is certainly true. But as is pointed out here, but with Israeli warplanes able to fly freely over the capital and Iranian counterattacks inflicting minimal damage, Israeli leaders have little incentive to halt their assault before doing more to destroy Iran's nuclear sites and further weaken the government's hold on power. Well, I think, the ultimate question here is for Americans is America going to be directly involved here? I'd argue to a large extent we're pretty indirectly involved in many ways. But of course, I think that like I said, that would be the big betrayal is if America gets directly involved, if it ends up, spilling out into a full-out war. Now, with that said, it is worth noting here today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel did announce that Israel does not need help to reach its goals in Iran. I don't know. It would seem Netanyahu, I'm not sure if that's a statement saying he's unhappy with Trump even trying to open diplomatic negotiations. It's a well-established fact that two of them over the past couple of months have not gotten along that well because Netanyahu wants to bomb immediately. Trump has wanted to play this game of, okay, we're willing to use force, but we want to try not to have to, right? We want to try to have diplomatic relations. So I'm not sure if that's a statement or whatever it is, but with that said, to that I say, okay, then that sounds great, right? I mean, I don't want America to be involved in helping, in getting into the war with Iran, right, in the first place. But anyways, he says they can accomplish their goals alone when it comes to Iran's nuclear facilities. So on that front, ultimately, guys, we will have to see what happens. But again, here, the big story, ladies and gentlemen, is that the peace talks are on the table. Right? We're taking a pause essentially to talk about that. Donald J. Trump this week said on Truth Social, Iran and Israel should make a deal and will make a deal, just like I got India and Pakistan to make, by the way, true. In that case, by using a trade with the U.S. to bring reason, cohesion, and sanity into the talks with two excellent leaders who were able to make a quickly decision and stop. Also, during my first term, Serbia and Kosovo were going at it hot and heavy, as they have for many decades, and this long-time conflict was ready to break out into war. I stopped it. Another case is Egypt and Ethiopia in their fight over a massive dam that is having an effect on the Nile River. There is peace, at least for now, because of my intervention, and it will stay that way. Likewise, we will have peace soon between Israel and Iran. Many calls and meetings are now taking place. I do a lot, never get credit for anything, but that's okay. The people understand. Make the Middle East great again. So that seems to be the position that is winning out now. We'll see what happens on that front. But again, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.